After the scare that the new arrival gave everybody, the staff couldn't continue dealing with the pixies, getting any more data at all, as it would take at least 2 full days for the kids to simply stop shaking out of fear. During this time, their hosts would not leave their sides. In fact, they wouldn't even leave each other's sides. The kids had gotten so scared that they would actually hold the host so tight that it would begin to hamper the ability for the host to breathe. While they waited for the kids to calm down, the facility manager tried to shake off the feeling of that multi-eyed freak that stared daggers through his soul. After a few hours, he composed himself and he told the military they could leave the facility. However, they did not know the danger of the new creature, and to that end, a single ship needed to remain in orbit. Just in case. Before he left, he simply looked at him and said, "You all can figure out the details. That's your area." And he just walked away to allow them to squabble amongst themselves who wanted to stay and who was going to go, because, in truth, the facility manager had much more pressing concerns. Arriving in the security guard's room, the manager was not surprised to see both were holding their little pixies in their arms. What he was shocked at was the sheer anger in the eyes of the hosts. Dr. Williams is usually very subdued, but her sheer rage came out as she snapped to her feet and shot him daggers through her eyes, a look so much that it could have killed him if she wanted. As well as that, the curses that began to come out of her mouth put him back on his heels, as he had never heard her curse a single time. Eventually, everything was calmed down, and the security guard simply turned and said, "So, did you kill it yet?" The manager responded, "No, we don't even know what we're looking at yet." And he pulls out a small recording device. "If your little ones could actually spread some light on this, then perhaps we can simply gas it." The security guard looks slight at him and says, "Gassing won't work. You'll have to either crush it, shoot it, or burn it." "So you know what it is?" the manager asked. "Damn right we do. And that damn thing is right now trying to find a way to break out of confinement and eat us all." At that moment, the security guard winced in pain as the pixie in his arms bites down into his flesh out of sheer fear, not wanting to be anywhere away from the host for a second, shoving its pincers deep down into the muscle just to hold on just a little bit tighter. As the blood began to slowly drip down the man's torso, the security guard continued with, "All right, sit, and we'll tell you all about why you need to burn that motherless fucker until there's nothing left." They all sit down as everyone tries to calm themselves, and the facilities manager adjusting the holographic recorder so it can make sure that it picks up everything. And as he's done, they begin. Dr. Williams is rocking the little girl, and she tries to comfort the little one in his arms. The little girl is squeezing so tight that she bites down even harder out of fear at every single little noise that might be there. The guard simply takes a breath before continuing. "All right, first things first. Yes, that is their home planet. And no, they don't have a name for it. Okay, I see you're confused, but since they actually project images into each other's minds, basically, names aren't exactly important. That's just the way they operate. Secondly, on their world, they only have to worry about a single predator. That multi-limbed bastard you got locked up." The guard has to pause at that moment as he has to adjust. The little one that is actually wrapped around his chest right now is clearly distressed and trying to just clamp down even tighter. The guard continues, "They call it a chrysalis eater." "A what?" the manager asked. "The cocoon they made to turn into humanoids like this, they call it a chrysalis. Don't ask me why they named it that way. I don't know." Normally, one of their species can simply go from mount to mount for centuries before they go through this sort of change. Hell, they don't even need it to reproduce. And I know your next question, okay? If they don't need it to reproduce or go through puberty or whatever metamorphosis, then why change? Unfortunately, thanks to some issues, they can only speculate. You see, with genetic memory like this, there's a lot of memories to go through, and some of their oldest memories are of a long lost society of their species, all showing traits of creatures that they bonded with. Now, we've talked about this, but the memories are so old that they seem to be almost nearly lost to time. If we had to guess, it was how they evolved. Think of it this way. Think of all the different things that you can accomplish in anywhere from Stone Age through medieval all the way to technical when you have different types of bodies. You can do specialized jobs so much faster and do more things. That being said, this is still speculation. I have to make sure that's clear. Now, somewhere on that planet, those things, like you have, began to arrive. They are so relentless at consuming a chrysalis that none have actually survived the transformation in so long. Most, if not all, never actually wake up as they're devoured by those things, as they're just sleeping. At this point, the two little ones began to visibly shake in fear as both the guard and the doc calmed down and reached their arms around, holding them tight, trying to calm them. Shh, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. We're just talking. The manager stays quiet and waits until the guard continues. He continues with, "That stinger self-sucking sack of shit you have exclusively eats those cocoons and anything that hatches from them. We've seen memories from these two where those freaks will scale sheer cliffs, I mean flatter than glass, to get what they want. Or they'll knock down or rip down, even bite down trees the size of redwoods to get their prey down so they can eat it. Don't study it. Just kill the fucking thing." At that point, the security guard stands up. "If you can't or won't, I will. Listen, don't play games. Just shoot the damn thing." He then takes a breath and sits down next to the doctor as they hold everyone close, trying to make sure that the young ones will be calm and they won't continue to pee themselves, which is getting very annoying. Realizing that he's pushed everything beyond where he can get a reasonable answer, the manager simply turns off the recorder, stands up, and leaves the room. After time, he begins sharing the information, and they tested this story by dropping pieces of the cocoon in different places inside the containment area. Each and every time, the creature would lock onto that piece as though it was laser guided and consume it violently, jumping at even the smallest piece, barely the size of a quarter, and simply biting down onto it, seemingly missing everything else, but somehow just scarfing it down. They tried everything, from bringing it in drones, to hanging it, to throwing it in, seeing if it'll fetch. They even tried sealing pieces inside metal containers that this creature very quickly grabbed a hold of, ripped them open in multiple pieces, and got a hold of what it wanted. They tried hanging it from a wire in the ceiling, as the walls should be too slick for anything to climb up. To their surprise, this thing would either climb right up the wall without a problem and simply grab the wire and pull it towards himself like some sort of spider, or it would get a running start or use all 10 of its legs to jump high enough to grab a hold of the piece and consume it, each time with sheer ferocity. They even placed a small piece of the cocoon on a rabbit. This rabbit, of course, would run around and make it more difficult for this thing to find, not to mention rabbits tend to be quick. However, this simply resulted in the creature running even faster, lunging over, eating the cocoon piece without barely touching the hare itself, but striking with enough force to scare the hare to death. The results are clear. This thing is very dangerous to anything around a cocoon. Yet that was not the factor that surprised all of them the most. It was something that was discovered by a simple member of the research team, the youngest one, in fact. As it turned out, each time after it consumed its meal, the creature would move back to the exact same spot next to the wall in the containment area and simply stare at it. It is though it was placing its head right against the wall. The researcher had a thought and pulled up the holographic blueprint of the facility. Then it looked to see which way the creature was moving. And it turned out the creature was staring through 27 bulkhead walls and 2 different floors as it focused directly at the 2 pixies and the 2 hosts in that room. Realizing this, the facility manager made a call. From the ship remaining in orbit, a 4-man fire team arrived in full exosuits. Their mission was simple: kill this creature, but try to leave as much as possible for study. The facility had already tried gas, and that didn't work. It tried vacuum on the creature, and it just seemed to put the creature in stasis as it just kind of curled up and laid there. And once an atmosphere was put back in, it just popped back up. They tried to poison it, but that just gave the creature either a really bad case of the runs, which seemed to put it in a bad mood, but who else wouldn't be mad if they suddenly were crapping themselves every time they moved? Another different poison they tried forced it to vomit. Another one made it sneeze almost uncontrollably, but only for a minute. And the last one they tried gave this creature the oddest case of hiccups anyone had ever seen, which would be funny if this thing wasn't so horrifying to look at. They told this to the Marines, and the Marines were concerned that they simply had to go and kill this thing. It was going to be too easy for them, as they saw how docile the creature is, and simply asked, is there any way to make it a challenge? They had to clear it through their chain of command, who their commander was immediately saying, yeah, do it, do it, do it. Always wanted to keep going. And with a nod to the manager, they simply looked at the researchers, and the researchers shrugged and then peeled off a small 1/2 gram of the cocoon and rubbed it on the chest of the suits. One of the Marines turned and said, "Are you sure this is going to work? It doesn't seem to be nearly enough. Maybe we need more." The researcher simply responded, "Oh yeah, this is more than enough. Trust me." As the 4 entered the containment area with their energy blades at the ready, it didn't take the creature but a second to smell what is coming and pounce. When the creature turned, it took off like a shot at a speed no other animal has ever been clocked. When it got close, it jumped at them like a massive spider and aimed right at the spot where it believed its food was, and it began to strike at the Marines, try to knock them down. The Marines, of course, swing their energy blades and sever one of the limbs before it realized that these Marines, these things in suits, were actually a threat. With the rest of its limbs, it struck at the 4 Marines inside, pinning one of them to the ground and disarming him by removing not only the energy blade, but the armored arm of the suit, with the arm inside. Another found himself airborne as 3 different massive legs reached up, pushed him back, but grabbed a hold of his suit and then tossed him through the air with such force that it struck the ceiling and then landed down with a giant thump. Another Marine tried to strike the head, but it was deflected and then slammed into the ground by another set of legs. The legs then began to strike and tear at the suit as they tried to get inside, as though this thing believed that the cocoon was inside the suit itself. The last one of the fire team attempted to be sneaky, ran off to the side, and tried to strike the body with the energy blade, but realized too late there is no blind spot on a creature that has so many eyes. The body spun around, sending the massive stinger directly into the lower torso of the Marine before he could even strike, and then grabbing him with another loose leg and pinning him to the ground. The creature then begins to focus on beating and tearing at the exosuit of Marines as it struck down so hard that even a thick chest plate was beginning to give way. You heard a piercing sound coming through the doorway, and suddenly several of the eyes of the creature exploded. From the doorway, a silhouette moved forward. The security guard was walking in with his EM rifle, and he put projectile after projectile into the creature. The handheld railgun penetrated the head over and over again, forcing the creature to back away due to pain and, of course, the concussion of each round that hit it. Shoulder firing the rifle over and over again, each shot striking the creature on the head, the neck, and upper torso as it flashed around. The creature even tried to protect itself with all of its many legs, but the bullets would simply go clean through the legs and sometimes even severing the appendages that simply fell on the floor, making a strange sound with a mixture of the chitinous shell clicking on the ground and the internal structure sliming and slurshing around. When the ammunition for the rifle was expended, the guard didn't even bother to reload. Instead, he simply dropped it at his feet, and he reached into a bag that he had hanging across him like a bandolier and pulled out a certain item. The Molotov cocktail was discolored as it was more than just liquor, but also mixed in some petroleum. Quickly lighting the makeshift fuse, he tossed it at the creature. The creature, realizing that this was most likely danger as well, reached up and grabbed the bottle on the way in, and successfully did so, yet he grabbed it with too much force, and the bottle simply burst open and caught fire. The fire, because it didn't actually strike the creature directly, didn't catch the entire creature on fire, but it did make it scream in fear and pain. The guard then reached into his bag and pulled out 2 more bottles of clouded liquid. He screamed before he threw, "Burn, you bastard!" as he threw the bottles at them one at a time. The homemade napalm exploded on the creature's body, and it thrashed around as the jungle jelly refused to extinguish no matter what it did. The guard then reached down, picked up his rifle, reloaded as quickly as he could, and proceeded to shoot the creature until he was completely out of ammo. This left the creature as nothing more than a stinky, smoldering mess, with a head that had taken so many projectiles that it was completely unrecognizable. Turning to the Marines, he immediately spun around and yelled, "Medic!" as one of them turned and yelled, "Corpsman!" A bunch of staff immediately came in with gurneys to get the wounded out as though they were already on their way, which would be understandable considering the firefight had lasted a good 2 minutes. The security guard noticed that the exosuits were malfunctioning, so the Marines couldn't actually lift their own wounded up, if they could even move themselves. He then walked over to the one missing his arm and said, "I got you, brother," reached up with his bare hands and lifted the Marine's suit and all and placed it on the gurney carefully so that they could get him out. After retrieving all the parts of men and the pieces of his suit, the guard simply walked out. As he passed the facility manager, he paused just long to say, "Next time I tell you to shoot the fucker, shoot the fucker." The facility manager didn't say anything, yet he was definitely not happy that all he had left to deal with this creature was a few parts and a burned husk. Still, at least he wouldn't have to worry about it breaking containment, as it was clear that this thing had the ability to do. After dealing with all this threat, everyone finally calmed down. The facility no longer had to deal with a creature they called nightmare fuel. And of course, the pixies and their mounts could finally walk around freely without being frightened, knowing that this thing was about. Most of the staff would constantly ask how the little pixies were doing until they saw the pixies finally flying again, which always delighted those who watched as they simply fluttered around the chow hall and wanted to show off their wings. Yet they also flew around outside, free as anything. And because of this, everybody was calm, at least in that moment. It was less than a month later before one of humanity's 4 battleships jumped directly into the system. They immediately sent a message claiming that the facility was now under Space Force jurisdiction. The facility manager, ever the pragmatist, calmly invited the admiral on board to come to the surface so they could talk. Yet he also told the admiral, "Leave your security up there." At first, the Admiral refused outright. That is, until he was told that the conversation they were currently having was going out on all channels. As everybody waited for the Admiral's shuttle to come down, the facility manager only had one question in his mind. What the hell do they want now? Hello everybody, this is Syntax. Thank you so much for joining me today on Part 4 of The Bonding. Before I go, I need to send out some big thank yous to a few of my supporters, and those will be Erica Gem, Guardian Sage, SS Demon, Brian Kemp, Sir, and Prozac and Pancakes. Thank you all for supporting the channel. Everybody else, I'll see you on the next one. This is Syntax, ejecting.